This video series will be made to go over this classic book, Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill. And I really love this book because I think it has so many gems within it. And I just think it holds true for no matter what time you're in. Even though this was written in the early 1900s, it just still holds true today, 100 years later. So to give an overview of the book, basically Napoleon Hill, who is the author, sat down with 500 of America's wealthiest individuals to figure out what it is that these individuals had in common in the way that they thought about money and how money consumed them and how they were able to attract such great wealth into their life. So this book serves kind of as a blueprint for others on their mindset about when it comes to attracting wealth. Will this book make you rich? No, probably not. But what it will do is set a foundation for your mind, for your train of thinking that will allow you to gain money and abundance consciousness that will allow you to have the right mindset as you go on your business endeavors, right? Because anything that you do, it all starts in the mind. It's all mental. And this book is a great starting point to really get your mind right when it comes to, how do I get from where I am, which is maybe broke or striving towards something greater, to actually achieving the riches that it is that you desire, how to achieve your financial desire. So with all that being said, this video series is going to go over chapter by chapter, just summarizing it based on my own understanding and reading of the book. So we're going to start with chapter 1, which is the power of thought. And this is the introduction of the book. This book starts with the introduction that thoughts are truly powerful, especially when they're mixed with a burning sense of desire, passion, and purpose towards translating that desire into riches or to some material object, something physical, some physical amount of success or result. This chapter pulls from a few examples, the first being Edwin C. Barnes, who was someone who had a burning desire to be a business associate of Thomas Edison, who is the world's greatest inventor of all time. And Mr. Barnes had no idea where to start, right? Because he didn't even have the money for the fare to meet Edison. So what he did have was that burning sense of desire. So him not having the fare money, that wasn't going to get in his way of going where he needed to go. He got on a freight train to meet Edison and present to him his idea of wanting to work with him. And this part is very important. I want to quote the book of what Edison said to really get into the mindset of what this is all about. So Edison said, recounting, "He stood there before me looking like an ordinary tramp, but there was something in the expression of his face which conveyed the impression that he was determined to get what he had come after. I had learned from years of experience with men that when a man really desires a thing so deeply that he is willing to stake his entire future on a single turn of the wheel in order to get it, he is sure to win. I gave him the opportunity he asked for because I saw he had made up his mind to stand by until he succeeded. Subsequent events proved that no mistake was made." So here's Thomas Edison recounting on this experience, and what he says is that sheer determination that he had in his eye, that he would stake his entire future just to move the needle a little forward. That is what he sees when a man will succeed, is when they are willing to put it all on the line just to get a little forward in their goal, right? It's that blind determination, being so blindly convinced that you will achieve whatever it is you set out for, no matter what. So Barnes didn't get the opportunity to work alongside Edison the way he wanted to as a partner from the very beginning. He took 5 years before he got his first real opportunity. And in that time, he did whatever it was that Edison had asked for. And he never wavered in his determination that he would eventually get what he would want. So he started on a nominal pay, just doing standard jobs, whatever Edison had asked him for, until one day Edison had created a new device known as the Edison dictating machine, which was later called the Ediphone. And the salesmen were not enthusiastic about this new invention that Edison had created. Now, this was the great opportunity for Barnes because when everyone else said no to Edison, this was his opportunity to say yes and prove himself that he could sell this product. And that's what he eventually did. And he did it so well and sold it so successfully that the business association started with Edison and Barnes and even grew a slogan made by Edison and installed by Barnes. So this association made Barnes very rich, a few $1,000,000 at that time, which is a huge fortune, especially in today's money. So what this proved is that an intangible impulse of thought can be transmuted into its physical counterpart by the application of known principles. And those principles are what we'll get into further along the book. But this man had thought himself into a partnership with the greatest inventor of all time. It all started in his mind. He never gave up no matter what. He did whatever was needed for 5 years, even though there may have not been a sign that he was getting any closer to his eventual goal. He never wavered in his determination and his knowing that one day it will happen. The next story that is outlined is from R.U. Darby, who stopped 3 feet from gold. So during the gold rush, he had the gold fever and he went out there shoveling to stake his claim at the riches and try to find some gold. So he borrowed the money from his relatives to buy the machinery and to dig up the ore, and he brought that to a smelter, and from there he made some money. A few more of those would clear the debts for the machinery, and then he would come into a big killing of profits. So down went the drills, and he continued drilling and drilling, trying to pick up the vein to find more gold. He kept going and going, and eventually he gave up. He quit because he couldn't find any more gold. So he thought he had just lost it. So what he did was he sold the machinery to a junk man, and he still owed his family money from what he borrowed. This junk man was actually really smart because when he got the machinery, what he did was he called a mining engineer to take a look, and what had been discovered was that the project failed because the owners were not familiar with the fault lines. His calculations showed that the vein would be found just 3 feet under from where Darby had stopped drilling. And this is exactly what was found. And this guy made millions of dollars from the ore because he found all this gold that was just 3 feet away from where it had stopped drilling. So had they just continued drilling for 3 more feet after all that effort, he would have found the gold. Darby went on to the insurance business, and this experience really profited him in many ways because he quoted, "I stopped 3 feet from gold, but I will never stop because men say no when I ask them to buy insurance." So this draws a parallel into our lives when we're trying to go for success. Is a lot of times when we meet these failures, we don't realize how close we are to success, how close we are to that goal. So you don't want to stop 3 feet away from reaching the goal, which means that you need to keep persevering and keep going no matter what. Darby then recounts on his 30-year experience as an insurance broker, keeps citing the fact that when someone would tell him no to insurance, he would just remember being so close to the gold, and that would propel him forward to making the sales, saying that the better portion of all his sales that were made was after there was an initial no. So he didn't stop when he got that first no. He kept persevering on with that person until that no became a yes. The author highlights in this chapter that when riches begin to come, they come so quickly in such great abundance that one wonders where they have been hiding during all those lean years. So it's like you work, work, work so blindly. Those are the lean years. And then once you actually strike the gold, once you actually hit it, everything comes pouring in abundantly. And I have seen that somewhat to be true in my past experience of when it rains, it pours. And that's true. So a lot of times, we have a lot of failures, but those failures are always bringing you one step closer to success. The author says that once you truly understand and master the principles of this philosophy and begin following the instructions for the application of these principles, your financial status will begin to improve. He says that success comes to those who are success conscious, while failure comes to those who indifferently allow themselves to become failure conscious. The object of this book is to help people change their mind from failure consciousness to success consciousness. The next story is about Henry Ford and the production of the V8 motor, which all of his engineers had said was impossible when he came with them with the original plan, and he just kept persisting and telling them, I'll have it no matter what. You keep working on it, keep working on it, keep working on it. Months would go by, years would go by, and then eventually they created the V8 motor, which was what propelled them into great success. So he never gave up on his vision, and he knew that if he just believed it was possible, then eventually they would find a way, the engineers would find a way to make it work, right? If you keep tweaking what you're doing and you keep trying new things out, then eventually in his mind they would find the solution, and that's what ended up happening. He then quotes poet W.C. Henley, who says, you are the master of your fate, the captain of your soul. And he says this is because we have the power of our own thoughts, and that we could think our way into riches through determination and obviously action, right? Acting on the plan. But through that determination, we could decide our own fate through the adoption of a money consciousness, of changing our consciousness from failure to success, from lack to abundance. So he introduces that in the next chapter, we're going to start getting into the principles of success. So to summarize on this chapter, it recounts experiences from several people with a commonality of a sheer determination to get exactly what it is that they had fixed in their mind, and they would not take a no for an answer. We saw that when one person gave up, the gold was only right there, right? It was 3 feet away. And we see that through the determination to really get what one wants, that's what ultimately leads them towards the path of success. Chapter 2 is entitled The Desire, the starting point of all achievement, the first step to riches. This chapter emphasizes the importance of desire, and this is actually one of the most important parts of the book, because this is where you're actually going to get some practical day-to-day advice that you could apply into your own life. This book goes on to explain that anyone who achieves great success has in them a burning desire. They don't just want or would like to achieve something, it becomes an all-consuming obsession. The author then reverts back to the story of Edwin C. Barnes, who when he started working for Thomas Edison, to anyone else he would just seem like a normal worker within this corporation, but to him, in his mind, he was already a business associate of Thomas Edison from the moment that he went and sought out to work with him. So it's like having a burning desire where you already see yourself in the position of your desire, and it just becomes an all-consuming obsession. Those are the people who end up succeeding. Those people who have a definitive desire, who just won't take no for an answer. This man didn't say, I'll keep my eyes open for another opportunity. He was all in on working with Edison, and that's the only way he would have it. So he would either achieve that or die trying to do it. And that's the kind of mentality that you need if you want to become successful. He then shares a story of the leader on a battlefield who took his soldiers and went on the boats to their enemy's country, who outnumbered them, and then he ordered to have those boats burned, and he looked to his soldiers and said, those ships are on fire now. So the only way we'll make it out of here alive is if we win. There's no retreat. The boats have been burned. This burning of the ships symbolically is what's necessary for regular men and women to succeed as well. It's symbolic of having no retreat, no backup plan, just being all in and giving it your all. The author says, wishing will not bring riches, but desiring riches with a state of mind that becomes an obsession, then planning definite ways and means to acquire riches, and backing those plans with persistence, which does not recognize failure, will bring riches. So if you mix a burning and obsessive desire with definite and practical plans of achieving that desire and back that up with persistence that doesn't recognize failure as an option, there is no way that you won't be successful. And I truly believe that, and I have seen that be true in my own life as well. So this is the good part, and I'm going to read this directly from the book. The method by which desire for riches can be transmuted into its financial equivalent consists of 6 definite practical steps. So this is actually practical advice that you could take and apply it into your own life. Step 1. Fix in your mind the exact amount of money you desire. It is not sufficient merely to say, I want plenty of money. Be definite as to the amount. There is a psychological reason for definiteness, which will be described in a subsequent chapter. Step 2. Determine exactly what you intend to give in return for the money you desire. There is no such reality as something for nothing. Step 3. Establish a definite date when you intend to possess the money you desire. Step 4. Create a definite plan for carrying out your desire and begin at once, whether you are ready or not, to put this plan into action. Step 5. Write out a clear, concise statement of the amount of money you intend to acquire. Name the time limit for its acquisition. State what you intend to give in return for the money and describe clearly the plan through which you intend to accumulate it. Step 6. Read your written statement aloud twice daily, once just before retiring at night and once after rising in the morning. As you read, see and feel and believe yourself already in possession of the money. Now, many may argue or complain that it can be really hard to see and feel and believe that they're already in possession of money when maybe in reality they're broke or they're struggling or they're not where they want to be. But that's the whole idea of obtaining a money consciousness. If you can already feel and embody someone who is rich and has already made what you're aspiring to make, that's when it starts to register in your subconscious mind. That's when you become subconsciously identified with the end goal. So you don't actually need anything to have that in your subconscious mind. That's what you want to do. You want to saturate your consciousness. That is kind of the underlying principle of this entire book, and we're definitely going to break it down more as we go into the subsequent chapters, but this is the whole ideology. So the book says that only those who become money conscious, which are those who have already embodied and feel like they're in the money even though they're not, are the ones who will end up accumulating the great riches. And this makes sense because most people who end up becoming rich started from nothing. So there needed to be a burning desire, a feeling of making it that propelled these people into success, because if they just continued with that attitude of they're broke and they lack money and they'll never make it, then how can you pull the strength to do the actions that are required to actually get to a position of success? Being rich and being wealthy is not necessarily just a number in the bank account. It's a state of mind. You could be broke and be a millionaire if you have the right mindset. And then there's other millionaires who are broke, right? Because it's all about their state of mind. You're either money conscious or you're not money conscious. That's why we see a lot of people who start from zero and end up being millionaires. And then we see people who have won the lottery for tens or hundreds of millions of dollars for them just to go broke, because they're not money conscious people. So at the end of the day, who you are isn't reflective of the money that you have in your bank. It's reflective of your consciousness. The author shares how these 6 steps, which are a prerequisite of success, require no hard labor, no sacrifices, no amount of schooling, or anything like that. But what the successful application of these principles do require is a strong strong and sufficient imagination, and it goes into how all the great leaders of the world who made something happen were at one point dreamers, wishers, hopers. They really had that imagination and that foresight, backed of course by that intense desire to make a dream into a reality. This world was built for practical dreamers, those who had huge dreams that were backed by a burning desire and followed up with a practical plan of acquisition that was executed with a mindset that didn't take no for an answer. This is what all the innovators, all the massively successful people, this is what they have in common. And then they don't take no for an answer. They just keep going and going and going, no matter what others say, no matter what they say. They continue to keep pursuing on, no matter how unrealistic or impractical their dreams may appear to the outside world. Actually, the more impractical and crazy your dreams appear, the better. If your dreams don't appear crazy to the average person, then you're not dreaming big enough. Thomas Edison dreamed of a lamp that could be operated by electricity, and despite more than 10,000 failures, he stood by that dream until he made it a physical reality. Practical dreamers do not quit. There's countless of examples that the author then goes into of dreamers who made that dream into a reality, including Abraham Lincoln, the Wright brothers, Charles Dickens, Helen Keller, and the list just goes on. The author then recounts on a personal experience that he had that really solidified his view in this philosophy and inspired him further to continue with the production of this book, which is that of his own son, who, when he was born, it looked like he would most likely never be able to hear like a normal person. And that's what all the doctors said. And as he grew up, his hearing was incredibly low. It was almost like he was deaf and mute, and he could only hear faintly if someone spoke very loud right in front of him. But the author had a burning desire that one day his son would hear like a regular person, and he refused to accept no as an answer. And throughout raising his child, he would always plant seeds and adopt a consciousness into him and his son that one day his son would be able to hear, that his son was a normal boy. So when it came to the schooling of his child, he ignored highly recommended advice that his child joins a special needs class because he wanted him to be associated with the normal hearing boys and girls and go to school with them. He also refused to ever let his son learn sign language because in his mind, his son would be able to one day hear. And the story goes into more detail, but just to summarize it, what ends up happening is he tried all these hearing devices and nothing would work until one day he found one that actually worked. And both him and his son never wavered in their faith that one day he would be able to hear. This story exemplifies how this burning desire and this consciousness could actually supersede nature and natural laws. Because it was found by doctors that this boy should never have been able to hear. When Blair was an adult, Dr. Irving, a noted specialist on such cases, examined him thoroughly. He was astounded when he learned how well my son hears and speaks, and said his examination indicated that theoretically the boy should not be able to hear at all. But the lad does hear, despite the fact that x-ray pictures show there is no opening in the skull whatsoever from where his ears should be to the brain. So despite having no opening in his skull where the ear and the brain should meet, which would enable him to hearing, as revealed by x-rays, his son was still able to hear. So this just goes to show, it almost sounds like science fiction, but this consciousness, this energy, this intangible force is real. It is real. And it is extremely powerful, and this is what is drawn from when achievements are made. If you have a burning desire and truly believe in your heart of hearts that you will have what it is that you are looking for, and you do the effort and you do the work and you have a plan and you have faith backed by this strong desire, then eventually you will achieve what it is you're looking for. Chapter 3 of Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill. This chapter is entitled Faith, Visualizing and Believing in the Attainment of Desire. The way the author explains it is that faith is a state of mind that can be induced or created by the repetition of affirmations and instructions to the subconscious mind through the principle known as autosuggestion. This principle of autosuggestion that the author will further explain in more detail later is basically the idea that as you believe will eventually come true. The author goes on to explain that through the principle of autosuggestion, all thoughts which have been emotionalized or given feeling and mixed with faith begin immediately to translate themselves into their physical equivalent or counterpart. The subconscious mind makes no distinction between thoughts of a negative or destructive nature and those thoughts of a positive or constructive nature. It simply just acts upon what it is being fed and begins to translate that into the physical reality. And for this reason, you'll notice that if you're one of those people that always says, why me? Always the worst things are happening to me, then you'll probably continue to see that being true in your life. This is the principle of autosuggestion. It's the energy that you are passing through to your subconscious mind through your thoughts and your emotions that are then being translated into your physical reality. So just as much as this works for the positive feelings and emotions and positive things that you desire, it works equally as much for thoughts that are of a negative or destructive nature. So your mind could either be your greatest asset or your greatest liability, depending on where you are focusing it. Now, it is true that if you are currently experiencing things in your physical reality that can be perceived as negative or a disadvantage, then it could make it harder to have that faith. But the whole idea behind faith and the principle of autosuggestion is that you are able to believe or even deceive your subconscious mind into believing that you are already in possession of that in which you wish to acquire or achieve, regardless of your current situation. The author then makes some statements about faith that I want to read verbatim from the book. Faith is the eternal elixir which gives life, power, and action to the impulse of thought. Faith is the starting point of all accumulation of riches. Faith is the basis of all miracles and mysteries that cannot be analyzed by the rules of science. Faith is the only known antidote to failure. Faith is the element, the chemical, which when mixed with prayer gives one direct communication with infinite intelligence. Faith is the element that transforms the ordinary vibration of thought created by the finite mind of man into the spiritual equivalent. Faith is the only agency through which the cosmic force of infinite intelligence can be harnessed and used. So the book goes on to say that even if someone is to tell themselves a lie over and over again, that lie is eventually going to be accepted as a truth. It will also be believed to be a truth, and that each one of us is who we are because of the dominating thoughts that we permit to occupy our minds. Thoughts which are mixed with any of the feelings or emotions constitute a magnetic force which attracts from the vibrations of the ether other similar or related thoughts. This refers to the whole magnetism of our thoughts and how what we truly think in our mind ends up becoming a reality. And I think that for many of us, we could see this to be true. Like when we're thinking very good thoughts, we just have a positive mindset, and that leads to positive action, and then that leads to a positive result, right? We just go through an up cycle, and similarly we have our downward spiral cycle where it just seems like everything is going wrong, whether it's in our personal lives, in our health, financially. It's just one crisis after another, and mentally we're just in a rut. We're not in that positive state of mind. We've allowed the negativity to really take us over. But what actually happens on a subconscious level, according to this book, that there are actual forces at play that correspond with our subconscious mind, and the more we're programmed into negative beliefs, the more negativity that we experience. And the same is true for positive thoughts. So the more we saturate our minds with positive thoughts, the more we achieve positive things in our reality. And to that, I've definitely found that to be true throughout my life. So basically, the author explains that there's an ether of vibrations that we're picking up from through our subconscious mind, and these include a range of anything from prosperity, happiness, love, all the way to hatred, misery, disease, illness, etc. So from this ether of vibrations, that in which we are most resonant to in our subconscious mind is what passes through from the ether through the subconscious mind and trickles its way down into our physical reality. The author encourages us to resolve to throw away those negative influences that may be affecting our vibrations in a negative way, and to begin to take inventory of our mental assets and liabilities. And among those, he says that what most people will find to be their greatest liability is a lack of self-confidence. And self-confidence ties back in with faith and belief, because when you're confident in yourself and you believe in yourself, that's what you're sending off to your subconscious mind, and then that's what you'll soon experience in your physical reality, because you believe that you could do something and therefore you're able to accomplish it. So the author then goes on to share a formula of self-confidence in this book that I'll share with you guys over here. 1. I know that I have the ability to achieve the object of my definite purpose in life. Therefore, I demand of myself persistent, continuous action towards its attainment, and I here and now promise to take such action. 2. I realize the dominating thoughts of my mind will eventually reproduce themselves in outward physical action and gradually transform themselves into physical reality. Therefore, I will concentrate my thoughts for 30 minutes daily upon the task of thinking of the person I intend to become, thereby creating in my mind a clear mental picture of that person. 3. I know through the principle of autosuggestion that any desire I persistently hold in my mind will eventually seek expression through some practical means of attaining the object. Therefore, I will devote 10 minutes daily to demanding of myself the development of self-confidence. 4. I have clearly written down a description of my definite chief aim in life. I will never stop trying until I have developed sufficient self-confidence for its attainment. 5. I fully realize that no wealth or position can long endure unless built upon truth and justice. Therefore, I will engage in no transaction that does not benefit all whom it affects. I will succeed by attracting to myself the forces I wish to use and the cooperation of other people. I will induce others to serve me because of my willingness to serve others. I will eliminate hatred, envy, jealousy, selfishness, and cynicism by developing love for all humanity, because I know that a negative attitude towards others can never bring me success. I will cause others to believe in me because I will believe in them and in myself. I will sign my name to this formula, commit it to memory, and repeat it aloud once a day with full faith that it will gradually influence my thoughts and actions so that I will become a self-reliant and successful person. He explains that understanding this formula is a law of nature that has baffled scientists for a long time, and it goes by the name of autosuggestion. And this principle of autosuggestion, or whatever name you may attach to it, is the intangible force, the mechanism by which the thoughts and the energy of the subconscious mind begins to make its way into our physical reality. Understanding this principle is really the underlying message of the entire book, that there are unseen forces at play when it comes to thought, actions, and creating a physical reality. This principle holds true whether you have the greatest life in the world filled with abundance, prosperity, and love, or even the worst life in the world that's just filled with depression, misery, and suffering. The law is just something that's there. It doesn't discriminate between right and wrong or good and bad. It just simply transmutes that in which it is being fed. Chapter 4 is entitled Autosuggestion, the medium for influencing the subconscious mind. Mastermind, the third step to riches. We touched upon the principle of autosuggestion in the chapter 3 summary of this book, but chapter 4 is dedicated solely to autosuggestion, what it is, and how to utilize it in your pursuit of accumulating riches. The way that the book defines autosuggestion is a term that applies to all suggestions and all self-administered stimuli that reach one's mind through the 5 senses. The word autosuggestion is interchangeable with the word self-suggestion. In other words, as previously stated, the dominating thoughts that one allows to occupy their minds eventually makes their way to the subconscious mind and into their reality. The book goes on to say that no thought, whether negative or positive, can make its way to the subconscious mind without the aid of the principle of autosuggestion. All impressions that are made through our 5 senses first stop at the conscious mind, where they will either be rejected or passed along to the subconscious mind. So therefore, the conscious mind serves as the outer guard to the subconscious mind, and it's up to the conscious mind to decide what's going to get passed or rejected. Nature designed us in a way where we are 100% in absolute control of what thoughts reach our subconscious mind. However, just because we have the control, it doesn't mean that we exercise it. And in most instances, we don't. That's why our minds and our lives could be filled with joy, abundance, and prosperity. Or similarly, if we're not careful and we don't have good control, we could end up with misery, depression, etc. So how autosuggestion fits into this equation between the conscious and the subconscious mind is that autosuggestion is the agency that ultimately ends up deciding what gets passed along from the conscious to the subconscious. So that's why it's interchangeable with the word self-suggestion, because that's actually us as individuals deciding which thoughts we're going to permit to enter our subconscious minds and which ones we reject at will. So the book then reminds us of the 6 steps we went over in chapter 2 of transmuting our desires into reality. If you don't remember, those 6 steps is where we defined exactly how much money we wanted, what we were going to do in exchange for that money, what date we would have that money by. We created our plan of attracting that money. We wrote this out in a written statement, and we were advised to read the statement aloud twice daily. However, chapter 4 acknowledges that the subconscious mind will only act on words that are emotionalized, and therefore just reading out a plain, simple written statement without attaching any emotion or feeling to it, it won't influence the subconscious mind, and we won't see any results unless the words we speak have been well emotionalized with the feeling of belief. The lack of emotionalizing your words as you speak them, according to the author, is the reason why the principle of autosuggestion does not work for most people. And for everyday people, it could be hard to learn how to emotionalize your words, especially when they have to do with desires that you're not already experiencing in your physical reality. However, the author explains that this principle of autosuggestion does work, and if you're not achieving the results, you simply need to keep trying until you are able to emotionalize those words. So you may not be able to do it from your very first time, but as time goes on, you'll get better and better at this, and this way you will be influencing your subconscious mind to aid you in the attraction of your desires. The author says that your ability to use the principle of autosuggestion will depend very largely on your capacity to concentrate upon a given desire until that desire becomes a burning obsession. In order to get the principle of autosuggestion to work for you in your life, you also need to fixate on the principle of concentration. In other words, in the 6 steps, as you fix the amount of money that you wish to acquire, actually envision that amount of money and then concentrate on envisioning yourself and feeling as if you are already in possession of that money in the present moment. This is how you begin to emotionalize your words. So now, although a lot of this has to do with your train of thinking and a lot of mental things and what some people would call pseudoscience, the truth is that you're not just going to sit in a corner and just think about money and desire it and then it's just going to happen. There is is still an exchange of service or merchandise that you must provide in order to achieve these riches. What this book is trying to do is focus on the right mindset and the subconscious connection of attracting wealth into your reality. So that's why the book keeps reverting back to the practical plans of acquisition of this money, because there is going to be a plan of action that you're going to take. It is going to require a lot of work, and the book in no place does not suggest that this is some kind of shortcut to riches. It simply outlines the subconscious conditioning you need to have in order to achieve that in which you desire. So now the regular person is saying, okay, that's all great, I understand this, but what are the plans? What is this master plan that I'm going to come up with that's going to make me millions of dollars? When is this plan going to come to me? And the book says that do not wait for your plan to have the idea of the money you want in your mind and to begin already to see yourself in possession of this money, while also at the same time demanding and expecting that your subconscious mind will pass to you the exact plans that you need. Now, these plans may flash into your mind as a hunch or an inspiration, and it is your responsibility that when you achieve these plans, that you act upon them. And failure to do so will be fatal to your chances of success, because you can only ask the universe for so much. Once the universe passes you the plans that you need, which will come to you because now your mind is fixated on expecting them, that you're going to achieve this money, this financial goal that you have by a certain date. So therefore, you'll have a hunch, some kind of inspiration, some kind of idea that will prop into your mind as to how you could achieve this goal. And once you get it, you need to act upon it. You need to take it and run with it, because that's a part of the process. So that's why when you envision yourself in possession of the money that you intend to acquire, also envision yourself at the same time rendering the service or selling the merchandise that you intend to in order to accumulate those riches. So now the book is going to give us instructions, 3 steps that we're going to use in culminations with the instructions outlined in chapter 2. And these 3 steps are going to show us how we don't just read our written statement, but how we're able to emotionalize it and concentrate on it so that it actually gets cemented in our subconscious mind. And it advises us to do this in a spirit of absolute faith. Step 1. Go into some quiet spot, preferably in bed at night, where you will not be disturbed or interrupted. Close your eyes and repeat aloud, so you may hear your own words, the written statement of the amount of money you intend to accumulate, the time limit for its accumulation, and a description of the service or merchandise you intend to give in return for the money. As you carry out these instructions, see yourself already in possession of the money. For example, suppose you intend to accumulate $100,000 by the 1st of January 5 years hence, and that you intend to give personal services in return for the money in the capacity of a sales representative. Your written statement of purpose should be similar to the following. By the first day of January 2000 blank, I will have in my possession $100,000, which will come to me in various amounts from time to time during the interim. In return for this money, I will give the most efficient service of which I am capable, rendering the fullest possible quantity and the best possible quality of service as a sales representative of blank. Describe the service or merchandise you intend to sell. I believe I will have this money in my possession. My faith is so strong that I can now see this money before my eyes. I can touch it with my hands. It is now awaiting transfer to me in the proportion that I deliver the service I intend to render in return for it. I am awaiting a plan by which to accumulate this money, and I will follow the plan when it is received. Step 2. Repeat this program night and morning until you see in your imagination the money you intend to accumulate. Step 3. Place a written copy of your statement where you could see it at night and morning. Read it just before retiring and upon rising until it has been memorized. So now as you read out your written statement, the author suggests that you remember in your mind that you are using the principle of autosuggestion to help you in accumulating that in which you desire. He also asks that you remember that the subconscious mind will only respond when these words have been well emotionalized. The strongest of such emotions being faith. Now, there is acknowledgement that these instructions can be met with a lot of skepticism, but he implores you to keep persisting in carrying out these instructions, and eventually you will saturate your subconscious mind with this belief, and when that happens, a whole universe of power will unfold to you. Now, I've read this book numerous times, and I've always starred this chapter as being the most important chapter in the entire book because it lays out exactly what this book is all about, and at the same time gives you written actionable instructions that you could do every day to really program your subconscious mind. The author reasserts at the end of the chapter just how vitally important the instructions that are outlined in this chapter really are to those who wish to be successful. He said that they must be understood and applied with persistence if one is going to succeed in transmuting their desires into a reality. He even goes on to say that once you've completed the book, to read the following instruction, which states to read the entire chapter aloud once every night until you become thoroughly convinced that the principle of autosuggestion is sound, that it will accomplish for you all that has been claimed for it. As you read, underscore with a pencil every statement that impresses you favorably. So even though this is a small chapter relative to the rest of the book, it's only 8 pages. He really asserts just how important this chapter is, and even advises you to come back and read this chapter every single night until you really understand the importance of autosuggestion. So this chapter really almost outlines what the entire book is all about, and that's this principle of autosuggestion. This idea that in which you place in your subconscious mind, if you believe in it enough, and if you combine that with a written statement that is super specific, that has been well emotionalized with the culmination of practical plans that you actually live out day in and day out, then you will ultimately find success. Chapter 5 is entitled Specialized Knowledge, Personal Experiences or Observations, the 4th Step to Riches. This chapter is all about knowledge and how to use knowledge effectively. There's a few things that the author breaks down about knowledge. Number 1 being that knowledge in and of itself is not power. So you could have all the knowledge in the world, but unless that knowledge is properly organized and then actually applied, the knowledge itself is not valuable to you. The knowledge only becomes valuable when you actually use it to your advantage. The next thing he talks about is general knowledge versus specialized knowledge. And general knowledge is exactly what it sounds like. It means being an overall knowledgeable person where you don't know everything about one particular subject, but you have a lot of broad knowledge in various different areas of life. Now, specialized knowledge, on the other hand, is where you have an incredible amount of knowledge on one specific subject, where you are a master of that specific subject. So you may not know all this other information, but what you do know about, whether that's cars or houses or whatever your field of expertise is, you're all in on that, and you know that like the back of your hand. And the author explains that it's the specialist, those who have specialized knowledge in a specific area or field, that fare well better than the generalists. And this honestly does make sense, because a specialist is what becomes very valuable in the marketplace, because usually when someone needs something, they need someone who is a complete expert at that specific thing. So being a generalist, a jack of all trades, is seldom a master of any. That statement really does hold true. So in your pursuit of building wealth and success, it's best to remain laser-like focused on one specific thing that you can become a complete expert in, and then spend the majority of your time studying and really mastering that specific thing, as opposed to learning about a bunch of different things in a bunch of different fields. The author also touches upon that knowledge can come in many different forms, and it's not just about schooling. This book was written a long time ago, but the principles remain true. He mentions how there's various different forms of knowledge, like public libraries, your own personal experience, training courses, and now a lot of that shifted where we still have great books, but there's also a plethora of resources on the internet. So the main fact being that education and knowledge doesn't stop with school. School and a formal education is only a starting point of knowledge. The problem with many schools is that they'll teach you the curriculum, but many people won't actually apply it, and that's why going to school doesn't necessarily guarantee success. So on the topic of knowledge, he uses Henry Ford in this example, but he talks about having what's called the mastermind group, and that's when in business, because we can't be masters of everything, we're going to have specialized knowledge, but he talks about the importance of organizing knowledge. So Henry Ford, he ran the assembly line as a manufacturer of cars, but in running his operations, he didn't have the general knowledge of every little component. So what he did was he built the right team of people around him, because you don't necessarily need to possess all the knowledge that you need for your business. You don't need to have that all yourself. You can call upon others who are specialized experts in specific things that are needed for your business in order for you to do the best work, because it becomes very challenging to run a huge operation all on your own. So that's why as you're building your business, you could profit heavily from the knowledge of others, and by utilizing that knowledge of others to your own advantage and to the advantage of the business entity. And this is why in many of the large companies and big corporations of today, you'll see that they have segmented departments where they have experts in each department that all come together and are organized. The knowledge is organized in a way that effectively produces results. Welcome to the Chapter 6 summary of Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill. This chapter is entitled Imagination, the Workshop of the Mind, the Fifth Step to Riches. The author explains the importance of imagination, stating that anything we can imagine, we can create, and all plans that have been created by people have began in the imagination. He explains that there are two forms of imagination, one being synthetic imagination, and this type of imagination doesn't create anything, it just organizes the material that it's already fed. Through this faculty of synthetic imagination, someone can arrange old concepts, ideas, and plans into new combinations. The second form of imagination is creative imagination, where all new ideas are born. The author says that it is through this faculty that one can communicate with the infinite intelligence and the subconscious minds of others and receive hunches or inspiration that gives them these bright new ideas. Both of these faculties of imagination are important as you turn your desire into a reality, because in turning your goal into a reality, that requires having a plan in place, and the organization of that plan is where the synthetic imagination comes to use. The way that a person develops imagination is over time by continuing to use it over and over again. So therefore, imagining themselves in success, imagining their plans, imagining what success looks like, the more you use imagination and call upon it, the more easier it will be for you to continue to use that imagination. The author then shares two stories of the practical use of imagination. The first one being a store clerk when a doctor walked in and they spoke for about an hour, and then the doctor goes back to his car and he gets out an old kettle of which the store clerk bought for $500, which was pretty much all that store clerk had at the time. Now this kettle and this transaction was the beginning and the founding of Coca-Cola. That drug clerk with an old kettle and one single idea mixed with imagination was able to build the massive empire that is Coca-Cola. The next story is about a clergyman by the name of Frank Gonzalez who observed many defects in the educational system as he was going through college. It was his desire to be the directing head of an educational institution that would teach kids to learn by doing. He kept thinking about this in his mind and his idea, and he reasoned that he needed $1 million in order to make this idea into a reality. But he had no way of getting his hands on $1 million, as that was more than a clergyman would make in an entire lifetime. So he kept mulling over how he could possibly get this money to put his idea into action. That's when he had an epiphany and called the newspapers to let them know that he was holding a sermon entitled "What I Would Do If I Had $1,000,000. He was already convinced in his mind that he would have this money by one way or another, even though it didn't seem certain how it would actually become a reality. He then went to work on that sermon for the whole rest of the day until midnight. The next morning, he rehearsed that sermon and then knelt and prayed that someone in attendance would supply him with the money he needed. Gonzalez, who was sharing this story, said that as he was praying, he had the assurance that he would definitely have this money. With all that excitement, he leaves his home to perform the sermon, only to realize as soon as he gets up to speak that he had left his sermon at home. He proceeded, stating that his subconscious mind was able to yield the material he needed to come directly from that source and express through his words. When he had finished and sat down, a man by the name of Philip D. Armour approached him and stated that he believed that he could do everything he said in that sermon and that he would give him the $1 million tomorrow in his office. Out of this story came the founding of the Armour Institute of Technology, and this story just goes to highlight how imagination can make something that seems impossible actually into a reality in a very short amount of time. The author concludes by reasserting that all great ideas and innovations were either created by or aided through the faculty of imagination. Welcome to the Chapter 7 summary of Think and Grow Rich. This chapter is entitled Organized Planning, the crystallization of desire into action, the 6th step towards riches. It's all about how to put that plan that you created to transmute your desires into reality, how to put that plan into action and actually execute upon that plan. The first instruction that the author gives to do this is to surround yourself with the right people to see your plan through. He refers to this as your mastermind group and says that anyone who has created anything great did it through the aid and the cooperation of other people who had other specialized gifts that perfectly complement what it is that you're looking to do. He recommends to meet with this group at least once per week and to have complete harmony with all the members within your group. Your plan should be practical and workable, and if your plan keeps failing, then you could always readjust or create a new plan. Just keep creating a new plan until you find success. He also reminds us that no follower of this philosophy that's contained in this book can expect to succeed without being met with that temporary defeat. A winner never quits and a quitter never wins. So as you're acting out your plans, just know if you're failing that that's a good thing. You're supposed to be met with failure because that means you're one step closer to success. The author then goes into the major attributes of leadership that I'm going to just read from here in the book without reading the full description, just what those attributes are. Number 1 is unwavering courage. Number 2 is self-control. Number 3 is a keen sense of judgment. Number 4 is definiteness of decision. Number 5 is definiteness of plan. Number 6 is the habit of doing more than paid. Number 7, a pleasing personality. Number 8, sympathy and understanding. Number 9, mastery of detail. Number 10, willingness to assume full responsibility. Number 11, cooperation. In order to succeed in a worthwhile undertaking, you need to have leadership qualities to be able to lead others and support them in your vision. The author explains that there's 2 forms of leadership, which is leadership with consent of and leadership by force. Now, in order to be an effective leader, your followers need to consent to and be happy to work with you, as opposed to leadership by force that many times leads to a lot of resentment, hatred, and dysfunction throughout the organization. With that being said, the author then goes into the top 10 major causes of failure in leadership. Number 1 is the inability to organize details. Number 2 is the unwillingness to render humble service. Number 3 is the expectation of pay for what they know instead of what they do with what they know. Number 4 is fear of competition from followers. Number 5 is the lack of imagination. Number 6 is selfishness. Number 7 is intemperance. Number 8 is disloyalty. Number 9 is emphasis of the authority of leadership. And number 10 is the emphasis of title. The next few pages of this chapter I feel are outdated because they talk about the industries where new leaders are needed and where to apply for positions, which since this book was written so long ago, it's So I'm going to skip over that and go to the next point, which is the QQS rating. This QQS rating, according to the author, determines the value of the service that you're marketing. The quality of service refers to the performance of every detail in connection with your position in the most efficient manner possible, with the object of greater efficiency always in mind. Quantity of service means the habit of giving all the service of which you are capable at all times, with the purpose of increasing the amount of service as you develop greater skill through practice and experience. The spirit of service means the habit of agreeable, harmonious conduct that will induce cooperation from associates and fellow employees. The author then goes into the 30 major causes of failure, which I'll read over here, and those are unfavorable hereditary background, lack of a well-defined purpose in life, lack of ambition to aim above mediocrity, insufficient education, lack of self-discipline, ill health, unfavorable environmental influences during childhood, procrastination, lack of persistence, negative personality, lack of controlled sexual urge, uncontrolled desire for something for nothing, lack of a well-defined power of decision, one or more of the 6 basic fears, wrong selection of a mate in marriage, overcaution, wrong selection of associates in business, superstition and prejudice, wrong selection of a vocation, lack of concentration of effort, the habit of indiscriminate spending, lack of enthusiasm, intolerance, intemperance, inability to cooperate with others, possession of power not acquired through self-effort, intentional dishonesty, egotism and vanity, guessing instead of thinking, and lack of capital. In order to understand where you are in effectiveness, the author encourages you to take an inventory of yourself by asking yourself these 28 questions. This is the self-analysis questionnaire for personal inventory. Have I attained the goal that I established as my objective for this year? Have I delivered service of the best possible quality of which I am capable, or could I have improved any part of the service? Have I delivered service in the greatest possible quantity of which I was capable? Has the spirit of my conduct been harmonious and cooperative at all times? Have I permitted the habit of procrastination to decrease my efficiency, and if so, to what extent? Have I improved my personality, and if so, in what ways? Have I been persistent in following my plans through to completion? Have I reached decisions promptly and definitely on all occasions? Have I permitted any one or more of the 6 basic fears in chapter 15 to decrease my efficiency? Have I been either overcautious or undercautious? Has my relationship with my colleagues in work been pleasant or unpleasant? If it has been unpleasant, has the fault been partly or wholly mine? Have I dissipated any of my energy through lack of concentration of effort? Have I been open-minded and tolerant in connection with all subjects? In what ways have I improved my ability to provide service? Have I been intemperate in any of my habits? Have I expressed either openly or secretively any form of egotism? Has my conduct towards my colleagues been such that it has induced them to respect me? Have my opinions and decisions been based upon guesswork or accuracy of analysis and thought? Have I followed the habit of budgeting my time, my expenses, and my income, and have I been conservative in these budgets? How much time have I devoted to unprofitable effort which I might have used to better advantage? How may I rebudget my time and change my habits so I will be more efficient during the coming year? Have I been guilty of any conduct that was not approved by my conscience? In what ways have I provided more service and better service than I was paid for? Have I been unfair to anyone, and if so, in what way? If I had been the purchaser of my own services for the year, would I have been satisfied with my purchase? Has the purchaser of my services been satisfied with the service I have provided, and if not, why not? Am I in the right vocation, and if not, why not? What is the present rating on the fundamental principles of success? Make this rating fairly and frankly, and have it checked by someone who is courageous enough to do it accurately. So these are the 28 questions that allow you to gauge what you've been doing well and in what areas can you improve. Author then goes into where and how to find your opportunity to make money. And he explains that any service or product that does well must provide some kind of value and meet some kind of need of the consumer. The author concludes this chapter by stating that the only way that someone can accumulate riches is through the sale of useful service, by providing a useful service to their customers and to the marketplace. So with that being said, one must analyze what there is a demand for, what is a valuable service that people are in need of, and provide that service, and then they will get paid directly in proportion to the amount of service, the amount of value that they're providing to that person. Welcome to the Chapter 8 summary of Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill. This chapter is called Decision, the Mastery of Procrastination, the 7th Step to Riches. Analysis of over 25,000 individuals found that the lack of decision was one of the leading causes of failure in these individuals. Procrastination, which is the exact opposite of decision, is a common enemy that almost everyone has to encounter and conquer. In studying some of the most successful people, it was found that there was a commonality among them, that they would reach decisions quickly and promptly and then change them, if at all, very slowly. Now, on the contrary, those who fail to succeed reach decisions, if they reach them at all, very slowly, and then are very quick to change these decisions after they've been made. Now, if you're chasing your dreams and you're making decisions, then these are going to be big, bold, and ambitious decisions. And when you're making these kind of decisions, you're almost entirely sure to be met with some resistance in the form of opinions from others. And who these opinions are coming from, many times they could be your colleagues, your coworkers, your neighbors, and even your friends and family who believe that they have your best interest at heart. And this isn't always because they want to be negative or bring you down. The truth is that 95% of people don't actually go after their dreams and live life on their own terms. So if you have these big and bold ideas, then a lot of times their minds just can't grasp it, and they'll sometimes say something along the lines of, that sounds like it may be too risky, or maybe you should go down a safer option. And the truth is that they're not wrong, because that is the reality that they've made for themselves. But what was found is that those who are the most successful do not allow their decision making and their mindset be influenced by the opinions of others. They're actually very stubborn in their belief, and they have those blinders on that it doesn't matter what he says or she says. They're just following their plan and they're following their purpose until they see it through. So if you allow yourself to be easily influenced by the opinions of others, then the chances are that you will fail in your journey towards success. Of the decisions you're going to make, the author proposes that the first one be that you keep your mouth shut and your ears and eyes open. And there's a few reasons why this makes sense. And number one is for procrastination. How many people do you know, or maybe this is you yourself, because I know I've done this before, where I talk so much about what I'm going to do and all the action I'm going to take and my visions and my dreams, but I'm not actually putting those dreams into action. I'm not actually putting that plan into work. So how many people do you know that have told you for weeks, months, or even years that they were going to get around to doing something, that they had this big plan, but they never really have anything to show for it because they never put in the action? If you take that same energy that you spent talking about your vision and you actually use that and act on your vision, then you will get a lot more further along your way. The second reason is that by oversharing your plans and purpose, then you're going to open yourself up to and invite in the opinions of others, which may start to influence your decision making or your mindset in one way or another. The third reason that the author says is that in sharing your visions, you may share them with someone who actually might take those from you and act quicker than you and better on your own plan than you are and beat you to the punchline. And although I don't know if I entirely agree with that, I suppose it is possible. I definitely see the value of keeping your mouth shut, but then keeping your eyes and ears open and alert to make other observations. I really like this quote that the author puts in the book that says, "Tell the world what you intend to do, but show it first." Because sharing your vision and talking about it with others is an important part of the process. It's part of embodying your plan, embodying your vision, being passionate about it. It definitely has its role. But do that after you've already taken the action and you're already embodying your vision. Maybe you already have results. You have something to show. This way, you're already in the game, no one can really question you because you already have results, and now when you speak about it, you're just adding momentum, you're adding fuel to the fire to keep you going. Welcome to the Chapter 9 summary of Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill. This chapter is entitled Persistence, the sustained effort necessary to induce faith, the 8th step to riches. Persistence is the essential factor of transmuting your desires into their monetary equivalent. The basis of persistence is the power of will. All those who succeed in any undertaking did so because they had extreme persistence. Persistence is necessary because along your journey towards success, you're going to be met with a lot of failure, a lot of temporary defeat, and you need to be persistent in your mind and in your actions if you're going to overcome that and ultimately reach your end desire. So in the earlier chapters, the author stretched the importance of having a money consciousness through the repetition of a written statement. And that's going to take persistence too, because you need to persist upon that and truly believe it, even when you're experiencing these moments of extreme defeat and extreme failure. You need to maintain that money consciousness because the poverty mindset will take any opportunity to seize the mind who is not occupied with money consciousness. So if you don't become saturated with this consciousness and become laser focused on your goals, then poverty mindset starts to creep in. You start to doubt yourself. You start to think in terms of scarcity, and that's how you get off the path. So that's why persistence is the ingredient that's going to keep you on the path. Being persistent in your mind and in your daily actions of living out your plan. The people who succeed are simply the most persistent, and there is no substitute that can take the place of persistence. You can't substitute it with any form of high quality. The act of being persistent and doing what you need to do every single day is what leads to ultimate success. That's filming those YouTube videos every day, making those phone calls every single day. Whatever it is, you're doing it daily and you don't give up even when you're getting no results, you're getting no views, and you're not experiencing the outcome that you had hoped for. Persistence is a state of mind, and therefore, even if you don't currently possess it, it's something that can be cultivated. There are 8 causes of persistence that I'm going to read directly from the book. 1. Definiteness of purpose. Knowing what you want is the first and perhaps the most important step towards the development of persistence. A strong motive forces you to surmount many difficulties. 2. Desire. It is comparatively easy to acquire and maintain persistence in pursuing the object of intense desire. 3. Self-reliance. Belief in your ability to carry out a plan encourages you to follow the plan with persistence. Self-reliance can be developed through the principle described in Chapter 4 on Autosuggestion. 4. Definiteness of plans. Organized plans, even though they may be weak and entirely impractical, encourage persistence. 5. Accurate knowledge. Knowing that your plans are sound based upon experience or observation encourages persistence. Guessing instead of knowing destroys persistence. 6. Cooperation. Sympathy, understanding, and harmonious cooperation with others tends to develop persistence. 7. Willpower. The habit of concentrating your thoughts upon the building of plans for the attainment of a definite purpose leads to persistence. 8. Habit. Persistence is the direct result of habit. The mind absorbs and becomes a part of the daily experiences upon which it feeds. Fear, the worst of all enemies, can be effectively cured by the forced repetition of acts of courage. The author then goes over what the symptoms of lack of persistence are, and these are the 16 symptoms that must be mastered if you will ever become successful. 1 is the failure to recognize and clearly define what you want. 2. Procrastination, with or without cause, usually backed up with a formidable array of alibis and excuses. 3. Lack of interest in acquiring specialized knowledge. 4. Indecision, the habit of passing the buck on all occasions instead of facing issues squarely, also backed by alibis. 5. The habit of relying upon alibis instead of creating definite plans for the solution of problems. 6. Self-satisfaction. There is but little remedy for this affliction and no hope for those who suffer from it. 7. Indifference, usually reflected in your readiness to compromise on all occasions rather than meet opposition and fight it. 8. The habit of blaming others for your mistakes and accepting unfavorable circumstances as being unavoidable. 9. Weakness of desire due to neglect in the choice of motives that impel action. 10. Willingness, even eagerness, to quit at the first sign of defeat, based upon one or more of the 6 basic fears. 11. Lack of organized plans placed in writing where they may be analyzed. 12. The habit of neglecting to move on ideas or to grasp opportunity when it presents itself. 13. Wishing instead of willing. 14. The habit of compromising with poverty instead of aiming at riches, a general absence of ambitions to be, to do, and to own. 15. Searching for all the shortcuts to riches, trying to get without giving a fair equivalent, usually reflected in the habit of gambling or endeavoring to drive sharp bargains. 16. Fear of criticism, failure to create plans and to put them into action because of what other people will think, do, or say. This enemy belongs at the head of the list because it generally exists in the subconscious mind without being recognized. See the 6 basic fears in chapter 15. The author goes on to explain that so many people give up on their dreams, or worse yet, don't even attempt to try them because they fear the criticism that will come along with it. But remember that the most successful people that this world has ever seen were labeled mad or crazy until their dreams finally became a reality, and then all of a sudden they were labeled a genius. If your dreams are not met with a high amount of criticism, then chances are that you're not dreaming big enough. The author then goes into the 4 necessary steps of developing persistence. The necessary steps are: 1. A definite purpose backed by a burning desire for its fulfillment. 2. A definite plan expressed in continuous action. 3. A mind closed tightly against all negative and discouraging influences, including negative suggestions of relatives, friends, and acquaintances. 4. A friendly alliance with one or more persons who will encourage you to follow through with both plan and purpose. If you listen back to these 4 steps, this is really all you need to reach your goals and to achieve your dream. It is that definite purpose and that burning desire that makes you start in the beginning and gives you strength when you feel like giving up. It is your definite plan and the continuous action on that plan every single day that's the actual physical work that you need to do in order to get to your goal. It is closing your mind off to all the negativity and all the chatter and all the opinions that could influence you and cause you to get off your track. And then it is having your support group, whether that's 1 or more people, that encourage you to act upon your plan and your purpose. It is these people, the people that are in your organization, the people that support you no matter what, that give you more fuel as you go towards your desires. Welcome to the Chapter 10 summary of Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill. This chapter is entitled The Power of the Mastermind, the Driving Force, the 9th Step to Riches. This chapter is all about gaining the cooperation of others in your aim towards success. The author says that power is essential for success and that power is necessary for the accumulation of money and the maintaining of it after it's been accumulated. The author refers to power as organized effort that is sufficient enough to transmute one's desires into reality. And he points out that if you look at anyone who had great success, they did so through the cooperation of others, and this group of other people that you build together is known as your mastermind group. The author defines the mastermind verbatimly as coordination of knowledge and effort in a spirit of harmony between 2 or more people for the attainment of a definite purpose. The author really stresses the importance of this mastermind group and in having others working with you in the spirit of harmony towards your goals. As one person alone, you don't have the knowledge, and even if you do, you don't have the bandwidth to do every little component in your business. So when you have a plan that's massive, eventually you'll need the cooperation cooperation of others, whether that's in the capacity of an employee or a consultant, over time you're going to need the aid of other people to really help you get towards your end goal. And it's not just about the specialized knowledge or skill set that that person brings to the table. It's all about the energy and the synergy that's created between the two or more people that are working together, and then this force actually becomes something that pushes you forward because the two of you begin to feed off of one another and you pick up on each other's thoughts and habits. So this is why it's very critical when putting together your group that you align yourself with the right people who not only have the right skill set, but more importantly have the right energy that you're able to work with effectively, positively, and harmoniously. So once you have your definite plan in place, which is how you plan to make your riches, you begin that plan at once, but over time realize that if you're stuck or you feel like you need to get to the next level, that a lot of times that means that you may need the aid of another person. And yes, in a practical sense, most of us are going to start these ventures on our own, but if you find yourself stuck and you're looking for knowledge, or you've hit a high enough level where you need to get to the next level of success, then bringing someone else on, whether that's in the capacity of a partner, of an employee, of an assistant, or even just a mentor or a consultant, or even just having a friend that you're able to bounce ideas off of and support one another, then this is all part of cooperation of this mastermind group. Over time, when your plans become big enough, then the cooperation of others is going to be a necessary inevitable that you can't get around. And in organizing your people, in organizing your group, you'll want to make sure that you have the best of the best, that you're able to support each other through the hard times and get to that success together. In almost every industry, there's people that feed off of one another and are going to be necessary pieces of the puzzle for you to find success. For me, as an example, as a real estate agent, there's all these different professions that I need that complement me and help me towards success. These are real estate attorneys, lenders, inspectors, appraisers. They all have a unique skill set that's necessary to the transaction. So having the right people around me in a transaction, even though we're not directly partnered in business, is important because we all have our own skill set that is necessary to the transaction, and we all need each other for both our individual success and for the success of the transaction as a whole. So when one of us succeed, we all succeed together. So it's important to keep this in mind that really you can't do everything on your own, and that's not the most effective and efficient way to do it anyways, even if you could. So through the cooperation of others, this is how things get done in the business world. This is how massive organizations have been built, and this is what moves things forward. Welcome to the Chapter 11 summary of Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill. This chapter is titled The Mystery of Sex Transmutation, the 10th Step to Riches. This chapter is about how the desire for sex is the strongest desire in humans, and this is an innate and instinctive desire that we have as humans, as it is necessary for procreation, which is our biological purpose. So when the author talks about transmuting sexual energy, he's talking about taking this intense desire, this intense urge, and harnessing that into a different avenue of our lives. Now, when you think of the word transmute, it's defined as the changing or transferring of one element or form of energy into another. Now, sex for many people is purely physical, but the author says we could take this energy and look for other outlets that enrich our mind, body, and soul. The author highlights studies that show that the men of greatest achievement are those with highly developed sex natures, men who have learned the art of sex transmutation, and that the men who have accomplished great fortunes and achieved outstanding recognition in art and business were motivated by the influence of a woman. Most of the geniuses in this world, that they come up with their ideas and their plans not from the normal plane of thinking. They draw their inspirations and ideas from an elevated plane of consciousness or of thinking that can only be accessed when the mind has been stimulated. And of the most intense stimulus that the mind can be under, the author points number one being the desire for sexual expression. The author, of course, points out how intemperance of sex and overindulgence could be absolutely fatal to your success, and that those who are successful in the transmutation of sexual energy do so with the power of will. So sexual energy is not about the physical action of sex. Think about when you're enamored by a beautiful woman and that energy that you feel, or think back upon a romantic and emotional session of love that you shared with a partner. That energy, that magnetism is what the author is was referring to. So if you could harness that and use it for inspiration of ideas and to inspire you into action, that is the successful transmutation of sexual energy. Now, this requires a controlled effort to be in control of your thoughts and your actions when you're under this influence. But if you do this right and you harness that energy into the right outlets, then this can become a catalyst for success. This energy could also be referred to as your personal magnetism that rubs off on people when you meet them, when you give them a handshake, in your tone of voice, in your expression, in your posture, having enthusiasm, having a good energy that other people love to feed off of. That's all a part of this magnetism and this energy. Hello and welcome to the Chapter 12 summary of Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill. This chapter is entitled The Subconscious Mind, the Connecting Link, the 11th Step to Riches. This chapter is all about the subconscious mind and how it is the link or the intermediary between the finite mind and the infinite intelligence. So basically, the author touches back on a lot of different points he mentioned in the previous chapters on how everything begins in the mind, and the subconscious mind, with the way it is programmed and the way that it is wired, that's what's bringing things into your physical reality. All things that materialize in our physical reality first start out as thoughts, which are emotionalized into our subconscious mind. And our subconscious mind is something that's playing every single day, responding to everything that we're feeding it. So if we neglect to feed our subconscious mind, if we neglect to consume positive information and feed it the thoughts of our desires and positive thoughts, then eventually it will go back into the negative. And that's why a lot of people have problems when it comes to picking up progress and gaining momentum, is that they allow their subconscious mind get saturated with negative ideas and things that bring them off of their course of their desires. The subconscious mind needs constant reminders and needs us to keep feeding it positive emotions, thoughts, feelings, and energy in order to reprogram itself from the negative thinking into the positive thinking. The author also reiterates the point that it's the emotionalized thoughts that get well ingrained into the subconscious mind, that it's not just what we think, it's more about what we feel, and the feeling and emotion, that is more so the language of the subconscious mind. So even if you're saying a lot of positive things, if you're mixing that with negative emotions or doubt and you don't really believe it, then it's going to be hard for that to register into your subconscious mind. Now, this does take practice and it takes persistence. That's why if you go back to the chapter on autosuggestion and on faith, you're going to have to maybe reread those chapters because this is a reprogramming of the mind. So the mind can definitely play games on you and start thinking more negatively, especially due to the formation of the habits of your mind over time. So it's really up to you to remain consistent in the reprogramming of your subconscious mind, because it does take a lot of conscious effort and a lot of faith and persistence to continue to focus on this every single day with your affirmations, repeating your desires, with working on your emotions that you're feeling on a daily basis, and remaining as positive as you can. The author then goes over the 7 major positive emotions and the 7 major negative emotions to be avoided. So the positive emotions are the emotion of desire, faith, love, sex, enthusiasm, romance, and hope. And the 7 major negative emotions are the emotion of fear, jealousy, hatred, revenge, greed, superstition, and anger. Now, of course, these emotions are meant to be felt. We're human beings and we have a range of emotions. However, when you allow your mind to get saturated on these negative emotions of jealousy, fear, hate, anger, then that begins to manifest into your personal reality. So, of course, you're going to feel these things, but we need to learn how to let these emotions pass and how to be rooted in our positive emotions that are going to bring us our desires. The author goes over again how this is a process of habit, and habitually, us as humans, we're more negative-oriented thinking. And the human mind can't be both negative and positive at the same time. Negative and positive thoughts can't occupy the mind at the same exact time. So it is through the formation of habits that we need to rewire our brain to be more positive thinking and let that be the dominating thoughts and emotions that take over our subconscious mind. To bring this point home, the author talks about the act of prayer and how many people pray after everything has already gone wrong, and therefore they're operating from a standpoint of fear and doubt. And that's why a lot of prayer becomes ineffective, because you're already defeated, and that's what's occupying your mind, is the fear and doubt that you're feeling. So you may be praying for a better life, but your thoughts, and more importantly your emotions, are rooted in fear and doubt, and therefore that is the signal that you're sending out, and infinite intelligence, God, your higher power, whatever you may call it, the universe, is not going to respond favorably to a mind that's casted with fear and doubt. We need to first saturate the mind with positive emotions and emotions of what we want to feel in our life, and then we will get more of the same. Welcome to the Chapter 13 summary of Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill. This chapter is entitled The Brain, a broadcasting and receiving station for thought, the 12th step to riches. So this is actually a really short chapter, but the main points of it is that the brain is not only a broadcasting center for thoughts, it also receives upon thoughts from others and from the outside as well. He goes over how the mind becomes more receptive when you increase the vibration, which is done through the emotional stimuli that we talked about in the past. At the top of the list is the emotion of sex, which we went over before in the previous chapters. And he goes over how most of the greatest forces in this world are intangible. For example, gravity, electricity, all these great forces that control the world, the greatest of them all being that intangible force of thought. He also goes over studies that have been conducted on the existence of things like telepathy and clairvoyance, and how this is an example of the brain being a receiving center, receiving impulses from the ether. Welcome to the Chapter 14 summary of Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill. This chapter is entitled The Sixth Sense, the door to the Temple of Wisdom, the 13th step to riches. So this sixth sense is the 13th and final step and principle on your way to transmuting your desire into their monetary equivalent. Now this chapter is going to require an open mind in order to grasp the content that is contained in this chapter. And that's because what the author is referring to in this chapter, this sixth sense, is not something that could really be understood mentally, and it's not something that could be described, as it's more spiritual in nature. It's a spiritual concept. This principle is the apex of the philosophy, and it can only be understood by fully mastering the last 12 chapters or 12 principles that have been outlined in this book. This is the true connection point, the medium between the infinite intelligence, the universe, or whatever spiritual belief that you have, and the mind itself. This is where the two marry. This is where your inspirations come from. Things that you can't put into words. Like if you're in a near-death experience, that instant hunch that you get. If you're almost in a car accident and you swerve out of the way, that hunch that told you to do this, that has been stimulated through some kind of intense emotion. Now the author reiterates that he is not some kind of believer in miracles, and this is simply just a law of nature. It's the same intelligence that permeates throughout nature, that turns day into night. And it is this that the author claims that we have access to through the power of the sixth sense, and how we can harness this sixth sense in order to get these inspirations that could guide us towards where we need to be. This is where we get our greatest forms of ideas, of inspiration, and of guidance. This is where you get that guidance from your guardian angels that guide you towards where you need to be and away from what you should avoid. So the author explains a specific way that he used that it actually sounds pretty brilliant through the faculty of his imagination and through this sixth sense in order to gain the inspiration and the guidance that he needed in fulfilling his desires and in creating this book itself. And what the author did, which originally he did not want to include in this book because of how outlandish it sounds to the average person in society, and this book was written, I don't know, 100 years ago, and still nothing much has changed. There is more information emerging about these spiritual concepts and ideologies. However, in the grand scheme of things and in the mainstream, it still sounds a little far-fetched, a little out there. Now, my mind tends to be a little more open to these things as I've been on a spiritual journey myself, so I can kind of grasp this and understand this. However, I could definitely understand why why the author may have been reluctant in including this in the book, but at the end of the day, it was a final piece that was needed. And what the author did was he basically imagined a council, think of a board of directors, a cabinet, a group of people that he admired and he wanted to gain their same characteristics. People like, at this time, Abraham Lincoln, Carnegie, Thomas Edison, people of that nature. He had about 12 people in his cabinet. And what he would do is basically he would study these people during his day. He would study their lives and how they thought and their characteristics. So it's almost like he knew them. And these were basically his mentors. They were his mastermind. They were his invisible counsel. So he basically set up meetings in his imagination where he would actually meet these people and talk about his problems and what he's currently going through and how to help, address certain situations. And these people, it actually became formal meetings that were occurring in his imagination. So he would close his eyes, imagine these people, and then the scene would kind of take form where they would be sitting around the table and they all started to even develop their own personalities and characteristics and tendencies in these meetings. For example, he said Abraham Lincoln was always late to these meetings, but I just want to get into the main point, which is that through the consultation with these people, this was actually the sixth sense and the infinite intelligence responding to him directly. He was in direct communication with it through this process because he's getting from these people directly exactly what he needs based on his understanding of them. And essentially, there is no real distinction between reality and imagination. These imaginations, these scenes that he was playing were actually a lot more real than one would think, because just because it's imagined, that is the language of the subconscious mind. So that doesn't make it not real. And in fact, that's where most of his greatest inspirations and ideas came from. And this allowed him to really think through the book and put everything together and complete his own desires. So think of the people in your life that you look up to, whether that's a spiritual deity in the form of Christ or Buddha or some kind of great person that accomplished a great thing in your industry. Think of these people, study these people. That's something that you should be doing anyways. But this takes it a step further, and it requires a mature enough mind to do this, where you could actually imagine yourself in a room with these people, where you could actually get advice from them. And this actually, to me, it sounds actually pretty brilliant. I understand how most people don't have access to this sixth sense because it hasn't been developed in the Western world. It's not something that we really adopt and accept into our belief system. And the author does state that most people don't begin to have access to this higher level of thinking, this sixth sense, until they get well into their 50s, and that mostly has to do with maturity. And he does state how through many years of meditation and adoption of these and similar kind of philosophies, that is what allows someone to really have access into this sixth sense. Welcome to the Chapter 15 summary of Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill. This chapter is titled How to Outwit the Six Ghosts of Fear, Clearing the Brain for Riches. The author states that before putting the philosophies of this book into use, that you need to clear out the three primary enemies, which is fear, indecision, and doubt. These three enemies go hand in hand together, and they all come back to fear. The way that the author puts it is that indecision is the seedling of fear, it crystallizes into doubt, and then the two of them blend together and turn into plain out fear. The author identifies the six most basic fears that most humans suffer from, and named in order of most common appearance, they are the fear of poverty, the fear of criticism, the fear of ill health, the fear of loss of love of someone, the fear of old age and the fear of death. All other important fears can somehow be grouped into one of these 6 main categories when it comes to fear. Now, fear is nothing but a state of mind, and as the author has said numerous times in this book, that your thought impulses have a way of transmuting into your reality. So when you're thinking negative, when you're focused on your fear, that fear is going to manifest itself into your actual physical reality. Just a way of fixing your mind on success could also have manifestation powers. The same is true for fear. So when you're actually fearful of these things, you're bringing them closer into your reality. The author then goes into elaborating further on each of the 6 basic fears and explaining them in more detail. But the primary point of this chapter is that as you affix your mind onto these fears and you let that lead into indecision and a state of mind that is of worry, then that chronic worrying, that chronic fear is going to find its way to manifest right into your reality and therefore preventing you from having your success. There's no compromise between poverty and success. You either have a success mindset or you have a poverty mindset. Now, having fears is normal. Once again, fear is a state of mind. It's that focusing in on it and letting it absorb you and consume your consciousness, which then has a way to manifest into your reality. We all have fear, and it's natural to feel the fear. But at the same time, you need to remember the foundation of your mindset. You need to be focused and set your mind on positivity, on success, and the actions that you know you need to do in order to become successful in any area of your life. What happens when you begin to let fear overtake your state of mind is that you become a lot less focused, less ambitious, you're not making the right decisions, you're loaded with indecision, and you're just in a chronic state of worry, and at those times, it seems like nothing goes right for you. I know that I've had periods of time in my life where this has been the case, and it all comes back to fear. When you set your mind on success and you don't let the fear creep in, then you're motivated, you take the right action, you begin to make decisions with more rational thinking, and as a result, that reflects in your reality. Now, conversely, the opposite is true when you let fear overtake your mind. The end point of this, and this is the point that is continually reiterated throughout the book, is that you have control of these thought impulses that you allow and breed into your life. The more you have fear, the more that fear breeds and begins to consume you alive. It destroys your self-confidence. It destroys your reliance on yourself. And it begins to cast a shadow of worry and doubt that slowly eats up away at you. It is ultimately up to you to control your mind and control your destiny, and you do that through your thoughts, then your actions, and then your reality. So welcome to the final chapter, chapter 16 summary of Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill. This chapter is titled The Devil's Workshop, the 7th basic evil. Now in the last chapter, we went over the 6 basic fears that most humans most commonly suffer from, and now in this chapter, the author claims that this 7th evil is worse than all of the other 6 that we previously went over and is more deep-seated and more fatal than all of those other 6s. And he calls this evil the evil susceptibility to negative influences. The people who accumulate great riches in life, they protect themselves against all evil, while the poverty-stricken never do. As humans, we are always susceptible to fear, and letting this fear, especially if we're not careful, letting this fear overtake our entire consciousness and begin to ruin our life. Now, in order to combat this fear, we need to protect ourselves because our susceptibility oftentimes comes from negative influences from others, whether it be the people we associate with or the media that we consume. There's constant negative influences out there, and as people who want to accumulate great riches in life or great success or great happiness or whatever the case may be, we need to protect ourselves from these evil influences or these negative influences that are trying to derail our progress. And how we do this, first and foremost, is through executing willpower, is to have the willpower to stay on course and not give in to our negative urges and our negative influences. We need to deliberately seek out to be around people and influences that allow us to be in control of our own thoughts and actions, and not try to input their own influence into what we're trying to build for ourselves. Our biggest weakness is allowing the influences of others to derail our plans and to derail our train of thinking and our thought patterns that are leading us to where we want to go. The author states that one of the ways to protect ourselves is by doing a self-analysis, analyzing ourselves internally through asking ourselves questions that will reveal where we're actually letting negative influences creep into our lives. This way, we're taking a full inventory on ourselves to see what areas need improvement and what areas we're actually suffering in and what areas we are doing a great job in. So he listed out a bunch of self-analysis questions. I'll read a few of them, but there are many in this book. So the self-analysis test questions. Do you complain often of feeling bad? If so, what is the cause? Do you find fault with other people at the slightest provocation? Do you frequently make mistakes in your work? If so, why? Are you sarcastic and offensive in your conversation? Do you deliberately avoid the association of anyone? If so, why? Do you suffer frequently with indigestion? If so, what is the cause? Does life seem futile and the future hopeless to you? If so, why? Do you like your occupation? If not, why? Do you often feel self-pity? If so, why? Are you envious of those who excel you? To which do you devote most time? Thinking of success or of failure? Are you gaining or losing self-confidence as you grow older? Do you learn something of value from all mistakes? Are you permitting some relative or acquaintance to worry you? If so, why? Are you sometimes in the clouds and at other times in the depths of despondency? Who has the most inspiring influence upon you? What is the cause? So there's about 20 or 30 more questions after this. And these are all questions that challenge you to look within yourself and to analyze your situation, your environment, and it begins to think about, where am I straying? Where am I going wrong? If so, why? You actually need to concentrate and think on, why is this the reality that I'm facing right now? And where these influences are coming from. So now you could actually identify them and you could isolate them and begin to remove them from your life. The things that the most successful people are able to do is control their mind. And mind control is a product of self-discipline and habit. The way that the author puts it is that you either control your mind or your mind controls you. There's no halfway compromise, meet in the middle kind of thing when it comes to this. He argues that the most practical means of mind control is to keep it busy on a definite purpose, backed by a definite plan. And that if you study the records of those who achieved noteworthy success, you will come to realize that each of them had the control over their mind and directed that control towards a definite objective. Without this control, success is just not possible. The distinguishing trait that the author says all people who don't achieve success have is that they know all the reasons for failures, and they have no shortage of excuses or alibis that have prevented them from achieving success. And the author lists out the 55 most famous alibis that are commonly used. So I'm going to read some of them for you now, and let me know if you ever thought of any of these for yourself. If only I didn't have a wife and family. If only I had enough pull. If only I had money. If only I had a good education. If only I could get a job. If only I had good health. If only I had time. If only times were better. If only other people understood me. If only conditions around me were different. If only I could live my life over again. If only I did not fear what they would say. If only I had been given a chance. If only I now had a chance. If only other people didn't have it in for me. If only nothing happened to stop me. If only I were younger. If only I could do what I want. If only I had been born rich. If only I could meet the right people. If only I had talent some people have. If only I dared assert myself. If only I had embraced past opportunities. If only people didn't get on my nerves. If only I didn't have to keep house and look after the children. If only I could save some money. If only the boss appreciated me. If only I had somebody to help me. If only my family understood me. If only I lived in a big city. If only I could just get started. If only I were free. If only I had the personality of some people. These are some of the alibis. There's more in the book, and maybe some of these relate to you. Maybe there's others that you use instead. But creating alibis, in other words, creating excuses for why you're not successful, is as old as people themselves, and it's all equally fatal to success. If you were only to put that same effort into actually doing the thing that you set out for, then you would have success, and you wouldn't even need to create an alibi to justify why you're not successful. We all have circumstances that can be viewed as unfavorable or not the ideal circumstance. No one is born perfect with all the talent, all the knowledge, all the money, the right family, the right connections, God-given talent, and everything just perfectly laid out for them. It doesn't work like that. The true warriors are the ones who take what they have, they take their circumstances, and they use it to make something better. Because the most important thing that you could have is your mind, and is the power and the desire to create something better. And by controlling your thoughts, that is your key. That is your power. And eventually what will happen, because I had a lot of these circumstances too, that these unfavorable circumstances, and maybe in some areas I still do. But what ends up happening is that when you persist and you don't take no for an answer, and you concentrate your thoughts and your actions on the reality that you want to achieve, then eventually what you notice is that a lot of these circumstances start to subside because your life is getting better. And as a virtue of that, these things that you had to worry about in the past don't become worries anymore. So the most important thing that you have, which no one can take away from you, you could be broke, you could have nowhere to live, you could have no family, you could have nothing. But the one thing that no one can take away from you is your mindset and your want to succeed, whatever success means for you. Guys, that concludes the chapter 16 summary and the full summary of Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill. Thank you so much for watching this video. Thank you guys. Let me know what your thoughts on this book are. And as always, I will see you in my next video.